even those on Capitol Hill where you seek to be? What type of policies and infrastructure should be in place to limit sexual harassment in the workplace and Congress in particular? Again, Larry Arata, you get 2 minutes, and then Margot Davidson and Rich Laser, you get a minute. Mr. Arata.
Well, I think it's an extremely relevant question for many reasons. On the day that Bill Cosby is finally brought and to be held accountable for his disaster reactions over the past several decades, our Congress person in the 7th that one of us will be replacing had a soulmate who was in his staff, someone who was less than half his age, who he used our taxpayers' money to pay hush money to. Obviously, we need a law that should not be legal, that Congress people should not be able to pay our taxpayers, use our taxpayers' money to pay hush money for those that they're sexually harassing. I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think anyone will disagree with me on that. So obviously, there's a culture of sexual harassment in our Congress that has to be addressed. And I think it's reflective of a culture at large. It's a culture at large that we really need to address pay inequity. We really need to address discrimination of all forms, not just a.
Well, let's do this,
Okay,
sir. I do appreciate it. Hold on for a second, Larry. Sir, we're gonna let the candidates take a chance to address, and then when we come to questions, we'll let you ask. Mr. Arata, you still get your time. I haven't forgotten. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So, unfortunately, there's still discrimination in our society. We've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. The 14th Amendment, equal protection of the law, is not being enforced. We need not just discrimination against women to be combated, but those who are LGBTQ community, and as well as those who we need ENDA to be implemented, and we need ENDA to be enforced.
Margot Davidson, you get to answer for 1 minute to the Me Too question.
Thank you for the question. As the only female legislator, the only female on this platform that has actual legislative experience, I have been the author of 2 bills that addresses this very issue. One of those pieces of legislation proposed is the #TimesUp legislation that I've authored that would make sure that all elected officials, not just in the State House, but all elected officials are held to account. There will be a process that expands the powers of the Ethics Commission so that they can investigate any accusations of sexual harassment. The second bill that I testified before the Labor and Industry Committee this past week has to do with discrimination of all types, including sexual harassment, which allows those to be investigated by the Human Resource Commission, and that both pieces of legislation has been applauded by the Women's Law Project, and they are actively being championed with bipartisan support. Thank you.
And then Rich Laser, you could hand the mic down to Rich. Thank you. Rich, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. So I want to echo with what Rec Davidson said, but also I think we need to strengthen workplace safety laws when it comes to how no woman should have to be treated disrespectfully at work or outside of work. We have to make sure that, I think another big piece of this too is that have diversity in the boardrooms and diversity in educational institutions. So to make sure that the decisions are coming from the top are diverse decisions and not just made by a bunch of men in a room dictating everything to a whole workplace or corporation or an educational institution. Also, I think another thing I want to touch on is pay equity. I mean, women aren't treated equally in the workplace. They're not paid the same as men to do the same work. So I think we have to start on all aspects of all levels of workplace, all aspects of life to make sure that everybody's treated equally. But I think we have to start at that as well, because once we do that, once we have diversification in the boardrooms and these institutions, then we'll see a lot from top down change. So, thank you.
Our next question is going to come from Lorraine.